Welcome to Is That Cashmere, the podcast that takes you on a journey to rediscover the questions of our youth and offers a fresh perspective on how we'd answer them today. Join us as we hear stories, insights, and advice from a diverse array of entrepreneurs and executives from around the world. Now get ready to unravel the threads of experience and wisdom with hosts Becca Hoeft and Kincannon.
All right, so here we are. It's our first episode of Is That Cashmere? Anna, let's dive into this a little bit, about why we're doing this, who we are, why we left corporate, all of those questions.
Yeah, I think it's great. Why we're doing this, I think we should go back into how we met.
Yeah, let's do it.
We actually met.
Wait, you were 12, I think, right?
I was 12, exactly.
Not. But you were young.
Well, I was still in college, and I got an internship at the bank where you were working.
Yes.
And then I ended up taking, after graduating, they offered me a full-time job. So I took it, and that's how we met. So it was the first job. And now look at us 2 decades later.
I know.
Continue finding ourselves at the same table.
You can't get rid of me.
No, but I think this is why we're doing the podcast, right? It's having the connections, which we love to call them as board of directors, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. You introduced me to this term of Beck. I remember this completely because there's this little hole-in-the-wall diner in St. Paul, and it is called the Egg and I.
Yeah.
I almost called it the Four Inns. Remember that place?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's another story.
That's a different one.
But I remember you met me at the Four Inns, and we were talking about what should I do next? And you looked at me and you said, Beck, you're on my personal board of directors. I was like, what? I'm sorry.
Well, it kind of goes deeper than friendship to some extent, right? And it's so different from your partner or your husband or your wife. It's really having somebody who understands the environment, right? Because they've been there. They potentially worked with you, worked for the same company. And then also willing to give you advice that's specific to you as your skills, right? In addition to personality, in addition to your experience. Where if I go to my husband, right, he just wants to solve it for me. And I've always been very open that I have a number of board of directors. And actually yesterday I was sitting in the kitchen and I was telling my husband that I need to call one of my bosses that I've had, a decade ago. Like I needed a male perspective on my board. Yeah.
Okay.
And, my husband, he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. I think you should call him. Right. Again, realizing that, my husband that's another thing we share together. My husband is a nurse, right? He's an RN, which is very different corporate environment. Yeah.
My husband is an RN too at the local children's hospital. And your husband he's not in cardiac. Is he in surgery?
Are we going to go there? We like to call it 3Bs.
Uh-oh.
It's brains, backs, and urology. So you can guess what the third B is.
Okay, I got you. Okay, and what my husband always says, big butts and little butts. That's the difference between children's and the regular. So we're there. But anyhow, we're digressing.
No, we just opened the window to what happens when nurses come to our houses for dinner. That's where the conversation goes.
You're right. There is no.
So this is why they're not my board of directors. I cannot have that conversation with them.
Yeah. And, but you introduced me to this idea of board of directors. I was like, oh, Anna's something. And ever since then, Anna's been on my personal board of directors as well. And so going through my career and trying to understand and help me make decisions related to my career. Should I ask for a raise? Should I take this new job? Should I start my own company? You and I have had that conversation. And guess what? I'm in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So this is I think why you and I are just so excited about this podcast, so that we can share our experiences, but also learn from each other.
Exactly. Learn from our journeys, inspire others, encourage and guide, looking back to what we've experienced. When things like this were not available to us when we started our career.
No, and frankly, if you turn back the wheel of time to when I went to school in the 80s, yes, it's true. Like, there was no one in leadership that was a female. And it was in any business. And frankly, the career options that I went to at my university were really down to education and nursing, which wasn't in my MO. And so I had to make up my own thing. And we paved the way, both of us paved the way for the next generation, and hoping to share some of those insights, and also learn from you, our listeners, as part of this podcast show.
Yeah. And if you look back, you kind of spend it, right? You created your own company and then you did marry the nurse. So,
well, same goes for you. Wow. We're living dual lives here.
Exactly. You would either become one or marry one, right? So
that's funny, Anna. I have to remember that. All right. So one of the things I always get asked, and I know you get asked this question a lot, is, I meet with these people and these women, whether at the beginning of their career or frankly, today I just got hit up with someone that's near the end of their career, and they're asking for advice. So tell me, what is the one thing that's consistent when you talk to someone and they ask you for, what is your one piece of advice you have?
I think to me, every time I seek advice, it's because I have a voice inside of me that's telling me that, hey, I want to look at something new, or there's something is happening, right? So I think listen to your gut, right? Because many times when we go to the advice, it's because we're just seeking validation. Am I thinking about it the right way? Should I be moving this direction, right? So having that unbiased opinion. So again, listen to your gut would be number one. And number two, always be yourself, right? At the end of the day, you have to be true to who you are as the person. That I think can help you navigate, whatever challenges you're facing. If you're early in a career, in the middle, at the end, that would be my advice.
And I think you're totally spot on. One of the things that my husband, Tim, always talks about is, Beck, someone everywhere we travel, whatever country we're in. And it's about making those connections and staying in contact. Those tiny connections can certainly make a difference as you go through your career.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the things I always tell anyone who's asking me for advice is a piece of advice that I learned from a professor. I went through this program through MIT. He was actually visiting from Oxford, and he said to this group going through this MIT leadership program, be interested, not interesting. So it kind of reminds me back in the day. Do you remember when social media first came out?
Yeah, I remember you were the first one to tell me what Twitter was.
Yeah.
You're so excited. And I was like, that's stupid.
I'm a trend.
Yes, you're a trendsetter.
Yeah, I am a trendsetter. But I remember in 2007, working for the same bank that you and I work for, I had to speak to as a couple hundred men, primarily men, very few women. And they didn't know what social media was and why it would be important to help grow their business. And I akin this to might be interesting, not interesting comment to social media, because when someone talks to me about, well, what should my social media strategy be? It's always about when the girl at the party or the woman at the party is always talking about themselves. Who do they get a business card from? No one, because they're so busy talking about themselves rather. But the moment that person starts being interested in someone else, then a connection starts to form. So that could be true on social media, that could be on one-on-one, it could be true on email. But the more you ask questions, the more you're interested, and not bragging about whatever trip you just went on or this new Louis Vuitton bag. I don't own one, by the way, that maybe I wish I would have bought. The less you talk about yourself and the more interested you are, the more deeper and better connections you will make.
See, I love it. I love this advice because as I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, I'm guilty. Not because I would brag about the purses, because I'm not into purses. I don't think I even have a purse to some extent. That's how bad I am. Right, exactly. It's more like a hand, like, whatever. But, I think that's an interesting, very interesting conversation, because to me, it's because I do like to talk, right? And I do like to make connections. Right. I think asking questions is one way to do it. But then the question becomes, but if you talk about a common topic, right? Like if the conversation is both ways. Yeah. So I'm totally guilty of it. Oh, I talk way more. I talk way more than I listen.
I'm totally guilty of it too.
So I love it. I love this.
This is a little pro tip coming from an ambivert. So remember, I'm an ambivert. Ambivert means I can put it on, I can be on stage, but then when I get home, I'm exhausted. I don't want to talk to anyone. I need to recharge. So when my social battery is down at 2%, which I think was it 2 weeks ago, we were in New York and I looked at you in the elevator. I'm like, social battery is done. I have to go to my room. But when your social battery is done or low, it's so much easier for an ambivert or an introvert to stay engaged in the conversation just by asking questions. You don't have to talk about yourself, just keep asking. So right. That's the beautiful part. One of the next things on our podcast, this is going to be a special feature every single episode. It's called, hear the drum roll, Cashmere Confessions. I feel like I should echo that.
Do I need to do the drum roll? I tried it.
Cashmere Confessions. No, I don't know. You, Nadia, can let us know if that'll work. But really, what a cashmere confession is something that if you turn the wheel of time backwards, what do you wish you would have learned sooner? What are things you've always wondered about? What if you feel stuck about something and you just want to ask for some advice? What are those cashmere confessions? And so we're going to be talking more about how you can share your cashmere confession in the future. But at this point, I'm going to ask my co-host, partner in crime, and friend, and personal board of directors, Anna Kincannon, what is your current cashmere confession?
My current one, it's actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I just had this light bulb moment. I realized that I bring my personal insecurities into my work. That was an aha moment for me.
Tell me more.
So, going from, different jobs and having different bosses, right? I caught myself thinking, I have this feeling of missing out, right? Okay, there's this big thing that happened. I wasn't invited to this meeting, right? Then I'm starting to panic inside, what's going on? Why wasn't I invited? Am I missing out on something, right? And I literally had to take a step back and then retrace. I had similar, feelings in my prior jobs. And then I just kind of thought to myself, Anna, I think it's pretty much impossible that you have so many experiences and people will purposely exclude you, right? So then it became, okay, is that a reality or is that my personal insecurity? And as soon as I realized that it was my personal insecurity, then I'm like, okay, all right. Just, the voice. And again, I am a strong individual. I consider myself a very strong individual, but I think just
very much so.
Connecting that dots was really an aha moment.
And you are one of the strongest women that I know. But at the same time, I know that I've been there. Where like, oh, did I do something? Why wasn't I invited? So I remember hearing that. I mean, feeling that rather. I would say, 30s, 40s. But at this point, I'm 56. I don't care. If you don't invite me to the meeting and I think I should be there, I'm going to go knock on your door and say, why didn't I get invited? Like at this, gone are all those fears, but I totally get it. Like that is a real thing. I had to think about my Cashmere confession. And it reminds me, so when do you usually have, when you work for corporate, did you have your annual raise and your bonus? What month was it?
It was like, end of February, March, right? Yeah.
This has been my entire career that you can expect your raise and your bonus by March. And so here I am at, preparing for my raise and bonus, and I got it. So happy. Fast forward a couple months, and my boss tells me, wait, and he was kind of complaining. Oh, so-and-so just asked for a raise. He asked for another raise. And I'm like, wait, you can ask for a raise outside of the February, March timeline? I didn't know it was a thing. But, for this person, for this colleague of mine, it made sense because the responsibilities changed, all of that. But I was so focused in on February, March, that being the magic time. So I don't know. Did you experience that at all?
Yes and no. I think I kind of had a shift in my mindset, primarily just through my direct leaders, right? So giving a promotion or a raise, right, throughout a year, multiple times, like, yes, that happened to me, right? And then I kind of learned the ropes that I can do that for my employees as well, right? Like it's actually easier to do that versus waiting until March because the pool of funds is so limited, right? So you want to sneak that. If the job, duties change. So there are so many ways of how to do around it. So it wasn't, I hear what you're saying. It was slightly different experience for me. And I feel like we need to do the whole episode like on raises and pay.
Yes.
Like that's the whole 9 yards. But I think for me was one time I wasn't at work because I took a day off. And I remember I wasn't driving, but I was in the car. And I get a call from my boss and I was like, hey, you're in office? I'm like, no. I was like, well, I just wanted to let you know that I pumped your pay, 20 grand.
Nice.
And you're like, oh my God, right? Like high five, right? Like I spent this whole weekend like celebrating because we were, driving to Madison to spend time with friends. So I am on this high celebrating whole weekend, like, oh my God, I'm amazing, right? And the thing that I didn't count is because I was switching teams and I was taking on more responsibility, right? So in my mind, I was like, that's why I'm getting this bump. But when I arrived to the office on Monday, and then at that point, now I can see how much my employees are making because now I'm their manager.
Right.
And I took over two individuals that were males that have been in the company longer than I have. And now I'm their manager. And so when I looked at their pay, I realized that I didn't get bumped 20 grand because I was amazing. I got bumped 20 grand to slightly be above their pay.
All right, so this is an episode. This is a whole episode.
Right. So that so I love the increase, but it wasn't driven. But it was right. So that happened to me.
Yeah. Well, number one, it makes me very disappointed that that's how it was handled, right?
Well, I mean, it wasn't like it was my own. To some extent, it was my own. Like I mean, knowing how everything works and from a legal perspective and being a female, right? If that didn't happen, yes, I would be the first one knocking on the door on Monday by noon and be like, are you kidding me? I'm making less than my employees and I'm managing them, right? I mean, that conversation would have happened, right? So
I've heard of organizations where managers make less, just FYI. This is a complete other episode. We're going to
this is like multiple episodes.
I know. This is like very deep and very wide. All right. So this ends our very first episode, and I am super excited. We've got a number of guests lined up. We are so excited, and guests from all over the world, which is amazing. So please join us. We're going to be pushing this out on every channel that's out there for podcasts, so watch for us. And if you have a Cashmere confession, make sure you email cashmereconfession@gmail.com, and we will add you on to the podcast. And we'll see you next time. Anna, anything in closing?
We're excited. This is, something that Becca and I have been talking for quite some time. So we're finally doing it. We have great energy. So this is our first one. So please be patient. I hope we get better. And do email us. We'd love to hear it from you. So we can only help and guide if we get the engagement, and we would love that.
And if you have ideas for guests that you would like to hear, please go ahead and let us know. Again, cashmereconfession@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Have a good one.
This has been Is That Cashmere? If you want to share your Cashmere confession or would like to share some of your personal insights about your career journey, email cashmereconfession@gmail.com. Is That Cashmere with Becca Hoeft and Anna Kincannon is a production of the Hoeft Group.